All right. You know what it is? It is the Bishop Chronicles, man. Listen, I'm always talking about jujitsu and philosophy. You already know that. It's really going to be on some stoic, Taoist, whateverist stuff, right? This is going to be a little bit more jujitsu heavy, not shocking. I got Mike Murrell chilling with me, right? How long have I known you? I remember you at Denny's. That's what I remember first.
Yeah, it was like 2009. I think something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And tell everybody about you and Cave Academy because it's in Pacifica, California, which is right by the beach. So it just screams jujitsu, right? Is there anything cooler than a jujitsu school near the beach? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. It's pretty cool. Um, Bro, welcome to Bishop Chronicles, and thank you for making time to kick it today.
Yep. No, I really appreciate it, man. Um, like I said, we both get busy with things, and it's nice to actually have a sit down, whether it's recorded or not, where we get to sit down and actually discuss stuff. So it's nice to sit down and talk with you.
I know, man. I know. So, I mean, like, look, there's a lot of reasons why I admire you. How long has the Cave Academy been around now?
Technically, it's the facility has been under my lease, so like I took it over in 2017, but I've been teaching here since 2013.
Damn.
I know I'm getting old. It's
You
happening.
we all are, bro. Jesus. But can you tell me about your how did you get into jujitsu? What was your entry point?
My entry point, I started when I was 18. I started judo and jiu-jitsu at City College, but the original,
San Francisco City?
yeah, City College, SF.
Yeah, yeah.
And the original thing was actually LimeWire back in the day when
Oh,
you used to
you want to wreck
download.
your computer really quick? You go download some cool shit on LimeWire and then take your stuff over to somebody to get it fixed.
Yeah, well, luckily my mom worked in computers, so I would just go in the basement and pull out a hard drive from something else when this hard drive got ruined, and
And
I'd
then
come.
you're ready to go.
I learned at least enough to recreate my computer after I destroyed it, but not enough to keep it safe. But
Beautiful.
LimeWire back in the day, I got the Boss Rutan tapes about like MMA and self-defense
No
that are,
way, the early Boss Rutan. So
yeah,
if
those
you
are
know Boss Rutan, ladies and gents, I mean, I would consider him a pioneer MMA guy,
mhm.
right? Pioneer MMA guy. Um, I've never known anybody who knew him that didn't say he wasn't the real deal. Real tough, hands plus submission, plus just there for the scrap. He never ran. He walked straight into the center and started swinging and kicking and tackling. Tell me what you learned on those.
Um, well, what shocked me about the Boss Rutan tapes was, put it this way, growing up, I was getting bullied a lot. And I started taking Taekwondo when I was like 6 or 7. And I did that for a couple of years, and I got a lot of medals and trophies and belts every 3 weeks or something like that. But I didn't actually learn how to fight. I thought I
Do
did.
you
And
feel
then
that you did though? I'm curious.
I
Did you feel like you knew how to fight?
oh, I definitely felt like I knew how to fight. But
Mhm.
then one time this kid Lavelle came up to me in the library and just hit me in the head with a book and then just started swinging at me. And I was like, like I had no idea what was going on. And I was like, man, I'm 18 belt ranks above this guy. And he
And
was,
I'm struggling.
dude, it was like Dragon Ball Z, just fist like, I was like, what is happening? So,
And are you from
um,
the city? Are you from San Francisco? Where are you from originally?
San Francisco,
Okay.
but we moved to Daly City when I was like 6 or 7.
Did you go to Westmore?
I went to Oceana, Terra Nova, and then Mission
The
High School.
Oceana, so did I, bro.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just long, probably when you were born or something. But yeah,
Yeah, but I went to Mission in the city eventually. But growing up, I just watched every media I could. I was watching Bruce Lee movies, and
yeah.
I was watching like the Three Ninjas and all that sort of stuff.
What was your
And I
first Bruce Lee movie?
Bruce Lee, well, Enter the Dragon.
Yeah,
That's the first one that everyone gets into.
mine
But
was mine was Return. Mine was Return.
Return of the Dragon.
So
Yeah.
continue,
So
continue.
so eventually basically I got scared of fighting, and everyone has that fight, flight, or freeze response, and I just had the freeze response. I just and clammed up, and when I finally saw those Boss Rutan tapes and the birth of the UFC, I saw it and I went, "Hey, this is definitely going to work. Like if
Yeah.
no one's bullying Boss Rutan on the playground and he doesn't
No,
care. He's not afraid of getting hit or taken down or anything. He's like, let's go.
they're for
Like
all of it.
exactly. And I knew that I needed that in my psyche and in my soul. I needed to get over that fear because ultimately, and I tell this to parents all the time, is that if your kid is afraid of getting in altercations, afraid of getting in fights, they should avoid them, but they shouldn't be afraid of them.
Mhm.
And the problem is, if you have that freeze response, you have to have those experiences as a young child that teaches you to fight back in the face of it. Like I wrote a quote down here that said it's a courage is the fear of being a coward. Both people, the coward and the
Yeah, who
courageous
said that?
hero, have the same feeling, but the person who actually overcomes that and pushes through it, that's the person who can actually do courageous things. And I was afraid of a lot of things. I
Me
could
too, dog.
teenager, I could kickflip a 14 stair on my skateboard and I could do things that could literally make me risk my own
Really
life.
bad.
Yeah, but some guy who can't fight coming up to me and just being like, "What's up?" Like I
Yeah.
was, which of course meant, like talking to a girl. Like it was like everything. So about that age, I saw Boss Rutan and I read a book called Radical Honesty, and
But who wrote that? That's interesting. I just like the title.
he's a fascinating guy. His name's Brad Blanton, Dr. Brad Blanton. You'd actually, I've been listening to some of your podcasts and stuff to kind of get acquainted. And I think you'd appreciate that his whole book is written without being edited.
Oh
So
man,
he wanted it to be
I
like,
love it.
yeah, he was like, I'm just gonna write this thing in the same language. I'm gonna say, I'm gonna cuss a lot. I'm gonna do all sorts of stuff,
Yeah.
and you get the point though. So
Yeah. That's great.
yeah, so at that point, I took on this ethic in my own mind that was like anything that I'm super super afraid of, I have to do.
And how old were you when you kind of started coming together with this idea?
About 16, 17.
Wow.
Yeah, and I just said, you know what? I'm afraid of fighting. I'm afraid of that. I have to go do it. So I dropped out of high school when I was 17, and I ended up working a job at PetSmart for a little bit, and I was
Hold on,
like,
hold on.
this ain't life, you know?
So you left Oceana at 17?
I left Oceana, went to Terra Nova, and then went to Mission. So
Bro,
um,
I left Oceana at 17 and got a GED, bro.
I never even got that. I got a college degree, but I never got a GED.
I
So
never went to college. I just got a GED.
yeah,
Wow.
but you're educated, so you know the difference between education and schooling. So that's
Yes.
nice.
I'm just wow. This is crazy. I didn't realize that knowing you this whole time that we were as parallel as we are in that thing. That's crazy.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
the scared thing, right? The only difference is I didn't do martial arts. I mean, I went to judo for a little bit, but that was it. That was
Yeah,
it.
for sure. But judo competition, that was especially the way they structure it, where every single tournament you're fighting like at least four matches usually. You're fighting everybody in your pool.
Yeah.
So I got to get that feeling of like, oh my God, oh my God. And then
Yeah.
it's okay. And then the second match, I feel, oh my God, oh my God. And then I beat him really easily. And
Yeah. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
didn't know I was capable of that. And then, so I lost my first match ever because I made a stupid mistake. It was really my fault.
Yeah.
And then every match for the rest of that tournament, I beat everybody. And I was like, oh, I can do this. Like,
Yeah.
I don't have to be afraid of this anymore. So, 120 something tournaments later, I stopped competing, but but I
Um,
learned a lot of lessons from that for sure.
and so when did you get into jujitsu? Where did you start and what was that like?
Well, I got my black belt in judo in 2008. I had done some jujitsu and studied it and just been like really like nerding out on it. I was really like, oh, this is really interesting. But I focused on judo for the first couple of years. I competed in some jujitsu tournaments without real jujitsu experience, which was interesting.
Right, right, right.
But
Where did you yeah.
then I went to Fairtex in the city and trained with Jake Shields and Gilbert Melendez for about 6 months. And after a big rib injury, I broke four ribs and punctured a lung. And I went,
What happened in that instance?
I think it was US Open 2006 in Santa Cruz, Claudio França, all those guys.
Yeah, yeah,
I
yeah. I was in a few of them.
Yeah, so I threw a guy as a white belt, and I threw a guy, but I knew that the point system meant that I had to keep him down to get my points. And so I threw him with a big hip throw, and then I landed on top of him, and he brought his knee up like he was recovering guard, and it just
Oh, you went into the knee.
all of my weight, all of his weight just collapsed right on that rib. So yeah. After that, I got my black belt in judo and I was competing quite heavily. I did like 50, 60 tournaments in judo, and then I was like, man, these rules are really stupid. I remember I went to the 2008 Olympic trials where Ronda Rousey was qualifying for the Olympics and stuff, and I just watched, and I watched everyone in my division playing these grip fight battles where they would just grip fight until somebody got a penalty. And then once they
Right.
were up by a penalty, they would just fake a hip throw and fall on their face and then wait for the referee to say mate. And then eventually the time runs out and they go, yes, I won. I'm going to the Olympics.
Champion. Yeah.
And I was like, this is lame. I need to go do something more interesting. So I read Mastering the Rubber Guard by Eddie Bravo. Probably
Yes.
saw it on the old Joe Rogan Experience.
Yes.
And after that, I was hooked. I was like, oh, I got to start training 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu.
That was the plan. Yeah,
That
yeah,
was
yeah.
the plan. And that's how I ended up running into you for sure.
Yeah. Is this the book you were discussing, my friend?
Yes.
The book?
That is
Yeah.
a gateway to both no-gi jiu-jitsu and marijuana, I believe.
Marijuana.
You
Lots
remember
of
the opening chapter? Like the opening chapter is
I
like
do.
Joe Rogan talking about like I never smoked weed, and then
And then I hung out with Eddie.
and then I did it with Eddie, and I was like, oh my God, it changed my life.
Dude, I swear. So a bunch of years ago, Eddie Bravo comes to town with Joe Rogan and Joey Coco Diaz.
Oh, Joey.
This was my introduction to him. We're hanging out at the Cobb's Comedy Club, and Joe Rogan and Eddie are like, "Man, it was me and my ex-wife backstage." And me and Joey are just getting along, hilarious. Joey's talking about like, man, I listened to Public Enemy while I was in jail, man. That shit got me through, bro. That shit got me through. He's doing all these fucking Chuck D lyrics and shit. I'm like, okay, okay. And then
Yep.
they're like, it was him, it was Eddie, Joe, and Tate Fletcher.
Take Fletcher too, yeah.
And so we're backstage, and they're like, come on, man, we're about to burn some hash. You got to do hash. You got to do hash. You got to do hash. And I was like, dude, I don't do anything. I was like, see, you guys, for you, this is just a Saturday night. I said, if I smoke hash with you guys are gonna come back. I'm gonna be butt naked in the street, tap dancing for sandwiches, and you guys are gonna be like, we ruined this guy's life. And they're like, all right. And they let it go. And Tate was like, I respect you, bro. That was good. I was like, it was funny.
Yep. That's nice, man. I think I saw Tate was in he was in the Equalizer movies.
And
It was
wasn't he
like
in the Mandalorian in that opening scene?
haven't seen The Mandalorian, but I
That's him
remember him
in
getting killed by Denzel in the Equalizer.
the Equalizer. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
99% sure in the opening scene of the first Mandalorian, he is the villain of that first scene. I think he's the first person the Mandalorian kills.
Nice, man.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you were at 10th Planet SF.
Hmm.
And how long were you there?
I think about 2 years,
Yeah,
something like that.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
and Denny and I had a miscommunication that turned into me having to leave the school.
Mhm.
And then eventually I ended up I well, I started a club in Park Merced near San Francisco State, and that was like a Filipino martial arts place that just did a Craigslist ad that said like, "Yo, man, we need someone to take up some time in the slot. We're looking for a jujitsu instructor." And I was like, "Well, I'm a black belt in judo, and I guess I do jujitsu." So I just I was running a club at City College, and I was like, all right, man, let's move this over there and let's see if we can make a little money off of this so that I don't have to get a regular job while I'm in school.
Yeah.
And that was fantastic. Like it ended up just being a really fun thing. I think I had maybe 35 students in the pinnacle of it. It was pretty small,
Oh, that's cool
but our
though.
guys though, even though I was technically a white belt who never got promoted to blue belt, and I still never got promoted to blue belt.
Really?
My first belt rank was a purple belt from Kurt Osiander, and yeah, I
Kurt Osiander.
he was just hilarious. One day he just comes into the gym and he goes like, Mike, you know, you got to start competing so we can give you so you can get to that purple belt because I'd been competing in blue belt tournaments for so long before I got to Half, so I was just like, I'm
Mm.
just gonna wear a blue belt. And Kurt goes, "You got to compete as a blue belt though." And I said, "Oh, I've been competing." And he goes like, "Oh, how many tournaments have you won at blue belt?" And I was like 24. And he was like, "Oh, oh, okay." So, so eventually,
That sounds exactly like Kurt would say and do.
exactly. Man, that guy was, I mean, he's still amazing, but it was definitely something I needed at the time. I think the first time I walked into that gym, Kurt just said, it was my buddy Miguel's kids were doing an MMA class, and that MMA class, little kids, they're maybe like 10 or 11, and the
Yeah,
two brothers got heated and they started fighting, like actually fighting each other. And
yeah.
Kurt, and I walk in and I'm talking to Kurt about signing up or doing a trial, and the kids start fighting, and he looks over and he, "Hey!" And everyone stops. Everyone in the room freezes. He goes, "Start doing push-ups." And the kids are like doing push-ups, and he's talking to me. And then after about a minute, the kids start looking back at me and they go like, "Hey, Kurt, how many push-ups do we have to do?" And he goes, "If you stop, I will set you on fire." And I was I was like, "All right, well, I need this fire lit under my ass, so I'm gonna train with this
I'm
guy."
in.
Yeah. So that's how I got to my blue belt and everything. Anyways, that's a long way around. I started that club as a white belt, but I was studying every Marcelo tape I could find, everything. I was just nerdy
You were
about it from
active.
the
You were
get-go.
active and engaged.
Yeah, and I had like good friends with me who just started with me, like Sharif Adam and these guys who just like they got super into it with me, and we'd go to tournaments and I would compete in the advanced division and they'd compete in the white belt, blue belt division. And I think Sharif, after like 3 months, maybe 6 months or something like that, went in and he was just
Bodying people.
triangling people who've been training for like 3.5 years, just like messing people up. And so we were this tiny school with no ranked instructor, but our guys were just going in and whooping dudes, and we were having a good old time with it. So I figured at that point, this is something I can do.
Mm.
Um, Eventually, that turned into a dispute, a miscommunication. Not even a miscommunication. It was some bad stuff that went on at the academy I was teaching out of, and I was like, I can't abide by this. So I just closed my program and I had nowhere to go. I was just like, all right, what am I going to do? So we finish up and we do our last class and we went to the bar next door. Guys were like, let me buy you a beer. And one of my older students, Mike Dew, who's, I think at the time he was in his mid 40s, he just comes to me and he says, hey, my daughter does Kajikembo out in Pacifica, and the guy who runs it only uses like 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. on like 3 days a week. Like he's not really using the space, but he has all this space. Why don't you come talk to him? And at that,
Wow.
yeah, so at that time I was like, Pacifica, man, it's not cool. It's not San Francisco. It's not, like it's not where the action is. There's
All the
not all these
plans. Right.
people. But
Right.
I went there and started that program, and it's small when it started, and it just built up. And over the years, with the help and the contribution of like so many of my friends that I've made here, and the community that we started building here, it's just turned into something that's amazing, just thriving.
Now you guys are not far from Lindemar Beach, which is where I learned to well, I technically learned to surf in Hawaii, but I was one of I think two or three black surfers in the 80s over there in Lindemar Beach. And I love that area. Was that area open to jujitsu because of Terra Nova's wrestling and stuff and Oceana wrestling, or was it a hard sell? Tell me about that early like 18 months first year. I'm curious.
18 months first year. Well, I would say that any impediments I had to building the place up had a lot to do with my maturity level at the time.
Mm.
I just didn't see myself as a leader. And I was maybe 23, 24. And so I just didn't see myself as a leader, and I didn't see the opportunity for what it was. But we did what we could. I was little stuff when you're starting an academy that scares the crap out of you, where you're just like, oh, I have to get a business license? Like, what
Yeah.
is that going to entail? And then it
Yeah,
turns
yeah,
out
yeah,
it's
yeah,
like
yeah.
you fill out a form and then
You
it's like nothing.
submitted.
It takes like anybody can do this, dude. You're fine. So I'm glad that I had people around me, like Martin Isaac, who runs a business next door. He would give me advice on that stuff, and it just eventually picked up steam. And that 18 months, I think we had maybe 20 kids and maybe 20 adults or something. Um, but there was a tipping point in my life, which took place at about 27, 28, where it was just, I'm not divulging other people's stuff, but like I had an ex that I was with for a long time, and there was some turmoil going on in her life. And I remember at one point, I'm like sitting in my mom's house, and I have to like I had not take care of them, but I had to give them a place to stay, her whole family, for a little bit. And I just sat there going, man, this isn't my house. I'm driving my grandma's car that I only kind of half paid for. I'm like just competing and doing jujitsu and teaching at like 8 gyms for like $40 a class or something. And it clicked where I just said, you know what, dude, I got to grow up. I got to be a man. I got to be able to handle this stuff. At that time I had like asked her to marry me and stuff. And I was like, how are you going to ask somebody to be your wife? You can't take care of yourself. You can't take care of anybody. You gotta be able to do stuff. So I called my buddy Marty and I said, you know what, man, as much as I hate to say this, do you have a job available? Because it's like auto leans, the most boring stuff in the world. So I started being like 7 a.m. I would show up at his place and I would start processing leans and I'd be on the phone all day with like toothless truckers who were trying to say VIN numbers to me. So like, here, I got 27 VINs for you. Ready?
Yeah.
A1FFFF1. And I'm like,
What?
is that Alpha Frank 1, 2? Just all day, just drinking, chugging coffee, like, ugh. And then when I would get off, I would go,
Great.
I would go to the gym and I would teach until like 9 o'clock. And then I would do projects at the gym until like 1 in the morning. I get like 4 hours of sleep. And I did that for about a year and a half, just going
Hmm.
crazy like that. And I believed in the dream. And I think because I believed in it at that point, where I'd actually taken that leadership role, that made other people believe in it too. And that's why I had so many people helping with construction and remodeling and um
It's a beautiful school, man.
yeah, and first like 3, 4 years I think I maybe made like 30 grand for myself out of like 4 years of work. But I put all of the money that came in from the gym into the gym. And I said, like, Field of Dreams, Kevin Costner, like, if you build it, they'll come. Don't build a half-ass school and then try to make money off of it. Build an amazing school, and then eventually it'll be somewhere where people actually want to come.
And it is. And you're doing great, man. Congratulations on that. Now, you got your black belt at Hal Gracie San Francisco?
Yep.
And that was from Half directly or Kurt, or how did that work? Because I mean, like you come from like I started a house long before you, and then I bailed, and so like I don't know how the inside of SF worked, especially when you were there.
Well, at the time, Half wasn't around very often, but Kurt was my main instructor the entire time, and he was my coach. But he was going through some personal stuff, and it like literally started on the day I was supposed to get my black belt, and I
Mm.
was like,
Whoa.
all right. So Half gave me my black belt that day, and yeah, that's where it ended up.
Yeah, no, that's great. And let me tell, can you tell me about that day? Like, what can you tell? Because I'm always asking black belts about the day they got their black belt. Were they expecting it? Were they not? How do they feel the day after? I'm just curious.
Well, I was very happy, obviously. I had a lot of people who were congratulating me and that kind of stuff. But if you want to know about certain stuff that happens when you become a black belt, which is good and bad, which is that you immediately start to get more respect and people put more weight to your words and the things that you do and the way that you act. But I remember pretty a stark contrast where like a week before that, half the people in the gym would be like, Mike, I don't really want to hear how you like doing this move because you're not even a black belt.
Mm.
And then just somebody wraps a belt around my waist and then they're like, oh, oh, Mike, thank you
Oh,
so much.
the
Oh,
innovative sensei,
it's amazing.
professor.
Oh, professor. Oh, let me bow to you. I'm like, so that taught me, and I'm sure that this is something that is applicable to a lot of things in life where it's just like you can't be really happy about the successes or really sad about the defeats in life. You just got to keep moving. And so like in that situation, just because I tried to show you, it's so funny. I'd show somebody like something I learned from Ryan Hall DVD or something like that, that I had been working on for like 3 years after I saw it, and I'm hitting it in competition and everything, and people don't want to, they don't care.
Whatever, bro.
Yeah. But then the next week I could be like, hey man, check this move out. It's a shrimp. And they'll be like,
Yeah,
so I learned at that point that the authority that comes with it is kind of fake. There's a lot of guys out there we know that are I'm not naming anyone
yeah,
specific, but there's
yeah.
people who are black belts who you're like, okay, I guess. Like I wouldn't want to learn anything from this person. And there are people who are blue belts or purple belts or something like that. You're like, yo,
Wow.
I
Yeah,
would
let's
love to,
go.
can you give me a private lesson? Like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
no,
No, absolutely. Um, Now, one of the things that I really admire about you, outside of, the fact that I actually like you and I know that you and your team are really good, is, the leg lock game is probably bigger, badder, and bolder in this very moment than it has ever been. Now, again, I started in 97, 98. And in the early days, the first leg lock that I remember was a knee crush from half that I learned from half.
yeah, the Sean Roberts.
Yeah. But this was before Sean.
Yeah, Sean was a
How
kid.
old is Sean? I don't even know
Sean,
how old.
Sean's I think a year or two younger than me, so he was probably like 6. I don't know.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
that was the first thing that I learned. I remember, and you wouldn't remember this because it was just before your time. There was a guy in LA. He was black. I don't remember his actual name, and I feel bad that I don't remember his name. But his nickname was the Prince of Leglocks.
I know what
He
you're talking about, yeah.
What was
He
his
mo-
name?
I don't remember his name. He moved up to Vegas. I remember him doing videos with Taylor McCornston and stuff back in the day.
Okay, okay, yeah. So he was
The
pretty
king of
dope.
knee bars, king of knee
Yeah, the
bars.
king of knee bars. And then what
There you go.
happened is he he ended up going like, you know, somebody sent one of the Gracies to go see him. I don't know if it was Greg or I don't remember who it was, but they saw him, he lost, and I remember he got real quiet after that loss. I don't really remember him in the mix. I'm not saying he wasn't there. I just don't remember his name after that loss down in LA.
Hmm.
I don't really hear much. Then there was a guy in the Daly City Pacifica area named Mike Fazzino.
Hmm.
Mike Fazzino had a garage, and then this was not long after Charles had opened up his original Daly City Academy. Because right now it's kind of across the street and down the street from where it used to be. It used to be a two level spot in Daly City, and so I was there. And Mike Fazzino starts opening up, and there was a guy named he's a black belt now, Megatron, Billy Ray. He was like,
Oh
"Yo,
yeah,
there's this guy. You know Megatron.
I know Megatron. Yeah.
And so me and Megatron used to go to kindergarten together. Like he was my first friend in life. He was my first friend in life. So he's like, you should come to Mike's place. And let me tell you, man, this was before even the term reaping existed. Right? It's before we knew what reaping was. And bro, let me tell you, people were popping everything in his garage for steady years. Now, Charles at that time was like, don't let me find out any of you going to that guy's place in Daly City.
Mm-mm.
Don't let me find out. And I was like, you will not find out. Right? Like, you
It
will
was
not,
like Footloose, dude. Don't let me catch you
right?
dancing.
Yeah, don't let me catch you dancing. So, so the thing is, so I would go there once in a while. I would study, but I wouldn't always roll because people were always getting injured.
Hmm.
And again, this was pre-reaping, so I don't even think we understood why the legs were popping. You know what I mean? Because we
Yep,
didn't
yep, yep.
understand like that
I can
when
tell you exactly why.
I know you can. But what I'm saying is we didn't then, right?
Yeah.
Like, then we didn't know. We were just so I remember Half not really liking leg locks in the beginning. The general
Hmm.
theory from Brazilian black belts in 2000 was that it was a cheap move.
Yep.
That as I went forward, here's what I learned about martial arts styles, period. If you want to know the limit of any fighting style, find out what's illegal and find out what they don't like.
Yep.
Right? Oh, we do kung fu. We're here and here. What happens if we tackle you? Hey, don't talk about no tackling. Actually, we're
We
here
talk about.
with the dummy. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Right?
never mind that we could get our ass kicked by a high school football player. You know what I mean?
Right? right? But like whatever you find out a style doesn't like, it's probably their weakness. And I quickly realized, oh snap, the Gracies have a lot of this figured out, but this leg lock thing they don't have as dialed in, right? And so little by little, the game kind of starts to advance. You got your Dean Listers, you know what
Mhm.
I'm saying, and some of the other guys who come into the game. What was your entry into the footlock game, and how did you get so good at it? I'm really curious. It's a great thing.
All right, so well, I think Dean was the originator of that. He's the one who planted the seed in John Danaher's head, as far
Right,
as I know the story goes. He said,
right, right, right,
why would you ignore 50% of the human body? And John
right,
goes, you got a fucking point there. Uh,
right.
but for me, I got big feet. I got a size 13 feet, and I was doing everything with my legs in jujitsu, and so I couldn't pull my feet out of stuff, and I didn't really know. I had some basic defenses and stuff. Denny wasn't like a slouch back then. He showed us some leg lock
Yeah,
stuff,
yeah.
and of course, Kurt would show me things and like that. But I would go to tournaments, and I had this like this phase where I was just trying to hit flying arm locks on everybody. And a
Hmm.
couple times where I'd throw flying arm locks, the guy would just like pull out of this and grab me in a foot lock, and I'd just get tapped. And I'd be like, ah, okay. Like, this is a huge weakness in my game. This is not good. Right. And I overcompensated for it the way that everyone else did, which was like becoming better at hiding my feet and then trying to smash and trying to, play top game or whatever. But there was a day that Gordon Ryan and Gary Tonin and little Nicky Ryan, when he was about 14 years old, came and trained with us at House. They were coming in for like fight to win for Gary was fighting.
Okay,
And I rolled with Nicky and I'm like, oh, I'm a brown belt at this time. And I'm like 215 pounds. And I'm like this
right.
little scrawny 130-pound kid. I'm like, all right, I'll roll with him, but
Oh,
I'm not gonna try to beat him up because it's messed
yeah,
up.
yeah, yeah.
He's just a kid and I'm so good. Um, and he's proceeded in one 6-minute round to tap me with like probably 9 heel hooks. It was just an I was just like,
You
if I
couldn't.
use my man strength and I force this on him, then maybe I could be. And I was like, dude, if I have to do that, I suck. So
Mm-hmm.
I was like, what is this stuff? And why are you guys doing it better than anyone that I've ever rolled with? Because I
Mm-hmm.
had rolled with really good people, but nobody caught me with leg locks like that. And
Right.
then from that moment, I just got hooked. I was like, all right, I have to learn this. And at that time, I was getting kind of bored with jiu-jitsu. I
Right.
was just feeling like the game was stale, especially the IBJJF game where it's like everyone's winning by advantages and not really caring about
Yeah,
the submission and all that.
that's a horrible thing.
So I went home, and this was like a year before any of the Danaher DVDs came out, anything like that. And I just went on YouTube and I would search for anything that had to do with Danaher's team. And so
Right.
I'd look up any matches from any
Um,
of his competitors, Oliver Taza, Nicky
right.
Ryan, like all those guys. And then I would look for anybody that was cursory in those videos. If you were on a social media post, if you were had your arm around Gary Tonin when you were training, and I could see your social media thing, I'd go look up your matches because
Mm-hmm.
maybe Gary was coaching you. So I would see like
Right,
Frank
right, right, right.
Rosenthal or someone like that when they were probably like a purple belt or something, and I would
Mhm.
go, all right, I'm watching all of his matches because I could hear Gary in the background saying like, "Oh, use ankle lock grips to climb the leg," and I'm like, "What the fuck does that mean?"
Right, right.
So I got really, really into it. And then, of course, John came out with his leg lock instructional,
This would have been
which
what year? Just remind, just to look at
2018,
2018.
something
Okay.
like I think it was 2018 or so. And I just got super into it. And then when I got that Danaher instructional on leg locks, I went kind of crazy with it. Like it's a 12-hour instructional. And I think I went through the first 12 hours the first day that I got the instructional. And I'm
You
just
just
taking
really
notes.
bodied the whole thing.
Yeah, I'm just like, you know what? I'm not going to retain this, but I'm going to take notes on every single section, like I
Mhm.
have an exam tomorrow in college or something, right? So at that point, Craig had come out with an instructional. I go through all of everything that he did. I used to do these study sessions on the weekends that we called Sunday Symposium, and it was not really a symposium, but it might
Right,
as
right,
well have
right,
been.
right.
It's just me, but I'm like, yo, we're gonna do 4 hours of these entries into the legs. Like we'll do the whole Craig Jones instruction on leg locks right now. Everybody just come in and we just sit there for 4 hours. And I'm like, bring coffee, dude. Let's do this.
Mhm.
So I got really into it that way. Then my big thing is I had a super fight, like a fight to win match against Manny Hocha,
Mhm.
who runs Strive Jiu Jitsu up in Lodi. And
Yeah.
he was heavy into leg locks, and he had caught me in a heel hook in the gi, oddly, um, at a Gracie Regionals or something like that, where they let you do heel hooks in the gi. And I was
Yeah.
like, man, okay, so I'm fighting this guy again. I gotta learn leg locks even better. So
Yeah.
I went to, I said, screw this. I gotta go learn from the source. So first thing I did is I took a trip up to TriStar Gym in Montreal, and I trained with
You went out there.
Firas Zahabi and GSP and Amen and all those guys. And
How long were you up
I
there?
I was up there for 2 weeks.
And how was that? Was that awesome?
It's amazing, man.
Imagine.
You can actually stay at the dorms there for like $20 a night, and then just train all day every day. And like a week of training is like $45. So you were like, all right, man, you're gonna train a lot. So I was training 3 times a day. Didn't have to focus on anything else. And then at the tail end of the trip, my buddy Ao was living in Brooklyn, and he said he was going to be in the West Coast. And I was like, oh, that's cool, man. He's like, hey, man, if you want to come to New York, you can use my apartment. I was like,
So you went there and did the Danaher thing?
yeah, and that was amazing.
How long was that? This was back to
Uh,
a back-to-back experience?
Yeah. It's
Mm.
like I left Montreal, I flew to New York. I'd never been to either places. I'm like, all right, let's figure this out. So I went in my first day in New York. Actually, I walked downstairs and there's no like desk guy. So I'm
Right,
just sitting down there and I'm trying to figure out what to do. Do I sign a
right,
paper? Do I pay?
right.
What's
What
going
happened?
on?
Yeah.
And then the only person I saw that I recognized was Anthony Bourdain. And he literally walked up to me and just was like, hey man, you look a little lost. And I was like, yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to do. He's like, I was like, yeah, you remember I met you when you were doing this filming with Kurt. He's I'm one of his students,
Yeah.
and he goes like, oh yeah, hell yeah, man. He starts telling me, he's like, oh, you're one of Kurt's black belts. I was like, yeah. He goes, dude, you're not paying. Just go ahead. You can change in the back or whatever like that. We talked for a few minutes and stuff, and he was super super chill, and like you would never know that that guy was famous from the way that he
Dude,
interacted with people.
I never got to meet him, but the way you described him is exactly how anybody else that I ever knew that knew him described him. And I think it's beautiful. I think he is one of the best modern and almost one of the most tragic jujitsu,
Yeah, this was,
you know?
I believe, like 10 days before he passed.
Oh my.
Yeah, and he was super, super happy and super just nice and everything. But anyways, I went in and trained, and Danaher was 7 a.m. and noon. I believe
Mm.
the schedule was that. So I would do the 7 a.m. class, then I do the noon class, then I would go to Marcelo's at night and train with Paul Schreiner, who's a friend, and like
Paul, shout out to
Paul's
Paul.
like people don't realize how good Paul is and how much he was
Bro, I think Paul,
the recipe for success out there in New York.
as much as he gets props inside, right? Like I still feel like you got to kind of know jujitsu to understand who Paul Schreiner is and what he represents skill wise,
Yeah.
right?
He's
I
a
mean,
he's a mastermind,
passing
man.
game, his leg lock game, his pressure game, his whole general knowledge, man. It's stellar. And it's always been stellar. I can't even think of a time when it wasn't.
Yeah, I mean, I heard of him originally because most of my jujitsu that I was actually doing in tournaments came from the Ryan Hall instructionals, and then
Mm.
every once in a while Ryan would mention on his thing, I learned this from Paul Schreiner, and then watching Paul teach in New York was, I say this like training with John and then going down the street and training with Paul in the same day. It's like, dude, you got two of the greatest minds in the history of jujitsu that you're just I watched Paul teach a beginner's class that was like UPA mount escapes and standing up from guard. And I took probably 12 pages of notes just going like, what? Oh, you can put
Yeah,
it that
bro,
way?
I can imagine. Yeah. You know, when me and Paul were cool, it was when he was still in Santa Cruz.
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Then right when I started getting cool with Josh Waitskin
Oh, yeah.
and Marcelo got it moving, then Paul went there. You know what I'm saying? Right as me and Paul were starting to kind of talk just a little bit more. Then never saw him again. I knew that was going to happen though. I said, man, if he goes to train with Marcelo, then there it is. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. I think I actually learned about Joshua Waitzkin. His book, was it The Art of Learning?
Yeah.
That was in the bathroom at Sean Roberts' house when I was going down there and I was staying at his house for a tournament. And I was like, oh, this is an interesting book. I
What's
got to read
this?
this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
chess master, that's just crazy.
Shout out to Josh.
Um, yeah. So anyways, New York, I trained every day. So like my waking up, I would get on the subway and I would go over there and John would do a very specific class every time that was really high level. And I loved that. It was a room full of like 100 people and it'd be 50 in the gi and 50 in no gi and he'd teach both simultaneously. And he's demonstrating judo techniques on like Gary St. Ledger, these guys who are like Olympic level judo guys.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I
the
know.
judo guys are going like, oh, yeah, show us more. And I'm like,
Mm.
man, this guy knows everything. But my rounds, every class would end with a situational, and the situational would be um, it'd be mount escapes, turtle, and close guard. And so that's the only sparring we did every day. And the philosophy behind that was like these are positions that are transitional and that you end up in constantly. And so if you spend more time on these three positions than the people that you fight, you'll be infinitely better than them.
And
You
what
know,
were they again? Mount Turtle and what?
mount, turtle, and close guard.
No
So you,
shit.
yeah. And so the idea was like, you know, junk rolling. I learned that from Firas. Like he would talk about junk training. Ryan would talk about that a lot too. And it was like, how many hours have you wasted running around in a circle doing jumping jacks, doing hip escapes, doing forward rolls, when you could have spent that same amount of time in specific positions getting better at them, right?
Yeah, just drilling down into the wormhole.
Yeah. So I like that about John's classes. And it's kind of how I run things to this day, where like there's an element that's static drilling and an element that's just like reinforcing those neural connections so that you understand like how this move relates to that one and you're practicing your mechanics on finishing and your sweeping and all of that. But then we do those situationals at the end where you're applying it and you're like working your way through it, right? But a big a big element that I learned from that as well was I would finish training and it was like my rounds were it would be like mount situationals with Jake Shields, then close guard with Gordon Ryan, then turtle attacks with Gary Tonin. And it was like twice a day, and then go to Marcelo's at night, right? But I would watch, I would sit there and I would watch what people did before class and after class. And as much as I was studying technique, I was studying how John ran the room and how the
Mm.
students
So
responded
the
to it. Because
teacher's methodology.
as an instructor, I'm like, pedagogy, what are we doing? Right. So I would watch Gordon Ryan, and Gordon would immediately after class just go take a nap. So he would finish doing the training and then he would just cruise over to the side, pull his rash guard over his face, and then just take a nap. And I was like, what is that about? And then I read a book called The Talent Code. Have you heard of this one?
You're opening my eyes. I'm all ears, sir.
Talent Code is a great book, but I mean, the principle of it was this guy was trying to figure out why there's talent hotbeds in certain parts of the world. Why like Brazil's soccer team became like went from being one of the worst in the world to the best in the world.
Mm.
And what he found when he went to go research that question was that they were playing a game futsal in Brazil, which was, the favela kids didn't have a giant field to go play on, so they played on a basketball court. So it'd be like 5 on 5 on a small basketball court. And because of that, you get the ball 500 times versus
More.
40 during
Right.
an, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know what the actual numbers are, but
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
idea
But
is now I have to learn how to shake you, how to fake you, how to get the ball around you, how to get to the goal with you being right here and your buddy being right here and your
playing
buddy
right.
being right here versus this big ass field, right? And he talked about the process of myelination, which I mean, I'm sure you studied this stuff before, but like if my forearm were like a neuron, like a brain cell, then you have your dendrites on one end, and then the electrical impulse is absorbed, and then it goes through and it transfers across the axon into another one. And on certain nerve cells, you have myelin sheaths, so like a hot dog bun made out of fat, and
Right.
that myelin is produced when you sleep. So
Mm.
on those nerve cells that have the myelin, the electrical impulse jumps across
I've seen that.
super, super fast. So
Yeah, yeah,
easy
yeah.
analogy is like right now, if you put your hand into a cup full of hot water, you feel it immediately, right? If I pour hot water in your eye, you'll go, ah.
Oh, yeah.
But if you put your room temperature foot into a super hot bath, you go, oh, this is fine. And then two
Right.
seconds later, you go, fuck my foot.
Yeah, I gotta take that out. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Right. So it's like the more myelinated that nerve cell is, the faster that information gets from one area to the next. And
So
so
he was sleeping to process what he had just done.
I don't know if it was intentional or not, but it clicked for me where I went, oh, if this is how you myelinate things. So you fill your brain, you've done this when you study, when you're like, my brain is
Right,
so full of stuff, I can't add anything else.
right.
But if you go take a nap after that, you take the things from short-term memory and you process them into long-term memory. So if you're going to have like a 7 a.m. training class and you want to learn that material, you go through it, you do the skill work, you conceptualize it, you train the body and the mind, and then you need to have a period where you go nap. Because if you do that and then you go to work for 8 hours and then you come to the next class, you feel wrecked. Like you don't feel like you retained everything that you did in the morning if you do new stuff at night, right?
Hmm.
So it's just a way, it was an interesting thing that I noticed there, and it's helped me out a lot. So now when I study things, I study till I feel like I've hit the point of diminishing returns, and then I'll take a nap and let that information kind of process into long-term memory. Then I can come back and do a little bit more studying. You know what I mean?
Dude, you're blowing my mind. There was a time when I was younger, like early 20s, before my 30s, where I would read. I mean, like I would drive through books. I have the ability to read a book quickly. I mean, I'm sure that's not shocking, but I've always been that way since I was like 9. When I was 9, I had a 12th grade reading comprehension. And so I could just scrape through books just because I loved it. But during this early young adult thing, all I did was read and sleep. That was
Read,
really
sleep,
it.
read, sleep, read,
That's I
sleep.
would just read and sleep. No wonder. Okay, you just helped me like bling. That is crazy, dude. Okay, so now let me ask you this.
Leg lock, sorry.
Yeah, no, this is important. This is important. This is important because just the other day I was on IG and I thought I saw that Nicky Ryan is retiring. I saw this thing about him having a serious knee injury that the doctor told him, you can keep going back, but if this particular injury happens again, it's going to be a wrap. And so allegedly and theoretically, that moment has arrived.
Oh,
So I
hmm.
haven't really gotten all the way into it. And there's a lot more that I need to do. And that's what made me want to talk with you about leg locks. Because I have always been of so there's a book, I don't have it in front of me. I think I lent it to somebody. The Rise and Evolution of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu by Robert Drysdale. Have you read that book?
I haven't, no.
It's a fucking masterpiece. Okay.
Drysdale's a legend for sure.
If Absolutely. If you want to know the history of Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and you don't have Robert Drysdale's book, you are lacking. And that's no disrespect to anybody else. It's a hell of a book. Okay. Now, that said, one of the interesting points he makes toward the close of the book is that, in his opinion, if I remember correctly, the only reason the leg lock game has evolved in the last few years isn't actually because of a breakthrough in attacks, although we know that that's true, right?
Hmm.
Breakthrough in attacks and da da da. He said it's actually been breakthroughs in medicine.
Yeah, you got
That that
availability of knee
that the
surgery
that
and
the that the attacks that we have now create these issues that you can go get fixed.
yeah,
But before that, you couldn't get them fixed, so you couldn't really afford to do it. And I've always been of the opinion, especially when people are young adults, that repeated leg lock injuries could only end up in situations where you couldn't do jujitsu anymore over
right,
time.
right, right.
And so for me, when I was young, probably 27, 28, right when I started, I met Elio, okay? And I interviewed him for Rap Pages magazine. Organized Noise was on the cover. It was crazy. Outcast, all them dudes, right? And there was this big story on Gracie Jiu Jitsu in that thing. If you go to adisabanjoko.com in the media section, there's a PDF. You can read it as it was ran in Rap Pages. My point is this: Elio was 86, hilarious, funny, could still choke you, showed me my first standing wrist grab escapes, and all this other stuff. And the thing that I stuck with me is I was like, I want to be like him.
Right. You want
I
this
want to
to
be
carry
I
on.
want to be 86 doing this. And that was right when I had started at House, right? So I sucked. I didn't have any aspirations or belief that I could be a UFC champion, blah, blah, blah. Plus I was married and a kid was on the way and all that. But I didn't have that aspiration. What my aspiration was to do jujitsu forever. And that was more important than medals. That was more important than how consistent I trained, more important than who my instructor was. I wanted to do jujitsu forever. I have a degenerative situation in my knees.
Hmm.
When the leg lock thing started, and I knew my parents already had bad knees, I was like, I can't play this because we already got knees that are half dusty. You know what I'm saying? I can't afford any problems. My leg lock game is. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people that could wreck my shit if I'm being honest. But my point is, I don't care because I wanted to do jujitsu forever,
Exactly.
and
Yeah.
I'm still trying to. So at 55, even though I'm like, oh, I'm an old grappler, and I am, I want to be right. So my question to you is, if this situation with Nick Ryan is accurate and he is out, is that the indication that my theory is right, or is he just an anomaly and a has to happen casualty in a world of leg locks?
Well, okay. Nikki's situation, I don't know anything about, so
All
I
right,
can't
yeah,
really
yeah,
speak
yeah,
to it.
yeah,
But
yeah.
with the injuries, sometimes that comes from that could just be a major mistake. Like, um, I know some people who train in the Roka room now, who train with John, and they'll do leg locks in there, but I've heard that in practice when they're rolling and things, they don't really attack them as much. They
Mm,
focus on the other transactions or the other transitions because the leg locks themselves are, they already know if they have the braking mechanics down, they already know they can break somebody's leg.
right.
But when it comes to here's my problem. Here's my problem with the Drysdale quote. And it's not that there's anything wrong with what he said.
Yeah.
Like what he said is completely valid. Like I get that. If you were in Brazil back in the day and somebody went for a knee bar or a heel hook and you got your knee popped, there was no surgery. There were no stem cells. It was you had a limp and then you couldn't go to work. And
I'm going
it's
to CPI. Scotty wasn't hooking you up.
exactly Scotty Nelson. It wasn't even a gleam in his eye to have that
Right.
thing at the time. You know what I mean? So when I think about it, though, ignorance to me is the inoculation against those massive injuries when it comes to leg locks. You have to have partners that you trust, but if you drill them correctly, where you're learning them, like there's a lot of stuff made in today's day and age about like, oh, we should do everything ecologically and we shouldn't be static drilling. But when it comes to leg locks, I would make the analogy that's very similar to judo, like throws. If you think about judo throws as I need to throw this person, and that's the whole goal, that's not how you practice judo. Like no judo instructors teach that. What you're
Right.
teaching is throwing, but the other half of what you're learning every time you get thrown is drilling how to fall correctly without getting hurt. And
Mm,
when it comes to the leg locks, I develop like flow drills that people work through where they're working on transitioning the legs, working on defense, working on offense. And I always point out to people that sorry, it's my dog. I always point out to people that the problem is that, and this is when you talked about the garage before, the thing that John did that I think it seems small, but it's massive, is he made a distinction, and he talks about it a lot in his instructionals. He made a distinction between the mechanism of finishing and the mechanism of control. And back in the day when people would throw heel hooks, they were around for forever. But the mechanism of control and the mechanism of finishing were exactly the same. It was, I got to hold on to this guy's leg and twist it until he taps, not, hey, I can hold on to this leg forever. Like I can hold you at the point where I can break you and you can't do anything about it. And I can do this with my wrist
and you're done.
and make you feel that tension on your knee. And if you're smart, you go, hey, you got me. And if I'm a good partner, if he's stupid, right, and
Right.
he doesn't recognize that, I let go and I transition to something else because I already know I got you, and I don't care if you say afterwards, "Oh, you were close on that footlock." You know that the number of
Yeah, yeah,
times
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that I've rolled with
Exactly.
a high level competitor and had him in like a backside 50-50 heel hook where I'm like,
I can rip it off.
if I sneeze right now, your leg's
I
going to be
can
ripped in
rip this
half.
whole thing.
And then I let go because I don't want them to hurt. I don't want to cripple someone. I'm just trying to
Right.
roll. And then afterwards they'll lecture me on like, oh, you didn't, if you just
I think if you would have
you
turned left.
if you're taking that leg and twist it a little bit more, I'm like, yeah, okay, sure. But like I'm open to it, but not really, buddy. Um, so when it comes to the leg locks, more people I think are hurt by kimuras. More people are hurt. most of the knee injuries I think in jiu-jitsu occur from standing position. It's from people wrestling when they don't know how to wrestle. It's people
Mm.
jumping guard. It's people not understanding how their knee moves in space without getting hurt, right? So, sorry.
No,
Can we,
I,
can, can we
I'm,
pause for 1 second?
yeah, yeah.
Just gonna move real quick.
Hold on. Hey guys.
And
Go.
we're back. Sorry, I had some people in the background making a bunch of noise, and I had to go talk to them
It's all good. It's all good.
before my brain exploded. So,
All good.
so in any case, when it comes to the safety with the leg locks, to me, you have to know how your body moves, and if you know how to deconstruct the leg, if you know how to create tension on the outside ligaments and on the inside ligaments, and you know how to do it with control, slowly, so that your partner does not get hurt, you're also simultaneously learning where you want your knee to be, what shape you want it to be in, how much bend you want in
Form,
your leg.
function.
You're
Right.
recognizing the danger for yourself.
Right.
And it's valid that now people feel like they can go balls to the wall because they can just get surgery, but that's also a really stupid idea. So, as far as I'm concerned, I actually in my nogi classes, my advanced nogi classes, I teach people leg locks very early. It could be a white belt, blue belt, I don't care. But what I tell them is you're not allowed to do any submissions in this gym that you can't control. And I have a simple rule, and that's if you hurt somebody with a leg lock, that's your fault. And if you get hurt with a leg lock, that's also your fault. Your job is to recognize and tap, and your job is to recognize and not injure, right?
Yeah.
But not every gym has that ethic. So I don't allow it. Like I do these Friday night open mats here. We put the lights on and music, and it's like a real
Yeah,
fun
yeah, they're
party.
dope. They're
And
dope.
we invite people in from all gyms. It's free for everybody. Friday night free for alls at Cave Academy. But the thing about it is at the beginning of every open mat, I walk through the ground rules. I make everybody come over and I go, hey, you all sign a waiver. Like that's number one. Okay. Now let's talk about what we can do here. We can do takedowns, but you can't do takedowns that are close to other people because I don't care if you get the takedown. We're here to have
Yeah,
fun and get
bro.
better at jujitsu.
Yeah, bro.
You're not allowed to slam. There's no guard jumping, no Kani Basami leg scissors, no Tani
Right, right,
Otosis where
right.
I'm sitting on your knee. I make
Right.
sure that people understand all of that and that they're on camera and that like you will be banned and I will talk to,
Won't be good for you, bro.
it will
It,
not be good. So on top of that, I tell them that, if you hurt somebody, that's your fault. And if you get hurt by somebody, that's your fault. And that's something you learn as a black belt because if I'm rolling with a white belt and I hurt them with an arm lock or a kimura, whose fault is that? But then suddenly we look at like white belts and blue belts and we go like, oh, well, he didn't turn and he should have tapped earlier. And it's like, shut up, dude. Like we're all here to learn jujitsu, and these people got to work, got to go to work tomorrow. These people got to live the rest of their lives. They got to pick up their
yeah,
kids in their arms. They got to do
yeah.
all that stuff. So we're getting better at it. I'm trying to take the principles of judo, mutual welfare and benefit, and maximum efficiency with minimal effort.
Mini Max.
So that's what I think John does a really good job of explaining that with his students, and that's why there's probably less injuries. I've trained at B team before, and there's definitely more of like a bro mindset where like
It's a little less
if you're homies, you're probably cooler, but there were definitely people there who were trying to like break me and
work.
trying to attack
Yeah,
me, and I'm like,
work.
all right, like it's more fun for me to train at John's. I'm 30, I'll be 38 in a week or two. I'm like,
Hey, happy birthday early.
yeah, well, thank you, sir. I'm just thinking like I don't compete anymore because the last time I competed, I tore my shoulder doing nothing. I won the match, I didn't even feel it, and then my shoulder was torn. And I went
Mm.
like, what do I want out of this sport now? Like I'm not scared of the altercation anymore. I'm not trying to fight bullies on the schoolyard or something like that. So what
Yeah,
am I trying to do here? And limping through my kids' class for 9 months is not exactly a good
mental.
way to be a good instructor or to do any of that stuff. So I'll still train in those rooms with those guys, but I give things up a lot easier. I tap a lot sooner.
Yeah,
I
bro.
I'm not afraid to lose, and I'm not concerned with, this guy beat me, but I could have beat him. I'm like, it doesn't matter, man. So I feel you, but as far as the leg locks go, if you don't know what you're doing, like name another part in life, like another skill that you can have where not knowing is better than knowing. Like not knowing keeps you safer than knowing. I'm like,
So then in theory, it's a mixture of you can't control how many times people get hurt or how they get hurt, right? Like,
Mm-mm.
in any given thing. But you can control the the methodology of how you teach and the philosophy that you want your students to carry while doing what is mutually known as very dangerous.
Yeah, for sure. Just like a judo room. If the throw that I'm doing risks me dropping you straight on your head, and then I do that to an Olympian, and the Olympian's like, "Oh, I fell perfectly," but then I do it to a white belt, and now he's in a wheelchair. Like that's a shit technique, dude. Like you
Yeah,
have to you have
yeah.
to be able to do this, and one of the magical powers of jujitsu is that we can scale it. That's why when it comes to self-defense, jiu-jitsu has got a unique philosophy where it's like, all right, man, I can use this single leg to take you down nice and easy because you're my drunk uncle and I don't want you to smack your head on the floor. And I can also take you down and kick you in the head if your friend has a knife and he's coming after my
Right,
girlfriend or
right,
something like that. It's like
right,
you can do all that.
right.
So we need to be able to scale that when it comes to the gym as well. So as far as I think you had some other questions about leg locks, right?
Well, I was really curious about that was my main thing. I wanted to talk to you about the history of it. I was curious about your thing, and I was, looking at these. And again, I haven't uh dove into the deep thing about whatever's going on with Nick Ryan, but I've always kind of thought about this fear that I have that the leg lock game, if not managed well, and you've made that point clear, might, and it's a big might, but I still think it's real, might like cut short a bunch of people who could be black belts that won't be black belts
Oh,
because
for sure.
on the side, and or we'll lose a generation. Like, in my day, we all kind of came up together and you had these little generations. And I feel this is the first generation that may devour itself, cannibalize itself in pursuit of leg locks and not become the Danahers and U's of the future, right? Because their knee, their hip, their ankle got wrecked at purple.
Yeah, well, I think it's the same for Kimuras. It's the same for I have a friend who did an Uchimata. He had done some judo, but maybe not enough judo
Yeah,
to
yeah,
do it
yeah.
correctly, or maybe just a freak accident occurred, and he did an Uchimata in a jiu-jitsu tournament, and he landed on his own head, and he doesn't do jiu-jitsu anymore and he was really, really good, but he doesn't do it
Yeah,
anymore because he hurt his neck real bad. And
yeah.
so I think it's our job as coaches to make sure that people are educated enough to stay consistent so that I don't want my students going out and having a knee surgery. I don't want them to have shoulder surgery. I don't want them to have neck problems or anything like that. So I try to make sure that it's very clear to everybody in the gym how we're supposed to train, and minimizing injury is at the top of that list. If you look back in the day when we came up too, everything was about intensity and it wasn't about consistency. We expected both, but you can't have both. You can't
Mm,
be 100% intense and 100% consistent because you will break yourself. You're
true,
broken. Sorry.
true.
If you're 20 and you're doing steroids, first, don't. But if you are, then yeah, you can train every day and your muscles will recover. Your muscles will recover fast and you'll
Yeah.
be able to train 2, 3 times a day because you're young and you're full of testosterone and trenbolone or whatever else crap you're doing. But your
Mhm.
connective tissues don't heal faster because of that. And that's something that people don't recognize.
Grind down and get overextended.
Yeah, but I mean the number of people that have been hurt by leg locks in my gym who don't do leg locks anymore is pretty much zero.
Wow.
We don't have very many leg lock injuries. We've had uh we've had things where people were training at other gyms and then they end up getting hurt. We've had people who
Right.
got minor injuries here. But man, if I think about all the people I know who've had knee surgeries who trained at my gym over the last 10 years, most of them it was had nothing to do with leg locks.
Right. It
I
was
had
just
I
what
had
you,
one guy, my buddy Marty, he was at a Camarillo tournament and he picked up a single leg on the other guy and his knee just went eh.
that was
Like
it.
it was nothing freak. He just went and he ended up having to have surgery. So I think that the fear is real, but it's it's also bullshit because you have to look at it and go, what are we doing? I learned this from Firas. Consistency over intensity. I'd rather have you in here working on the skill 5 days a week for 1 hour, not rolling hard, and maybe only rolling really, really hard one day because you're having fun and it's somebody you trust, than coming in here 2 days a week or 3 days a week and just going balls to the wall,
Bottling it.
8 minute rounds. It's great. That's why I came up
Yeah.
with Kurt. And there's the thing about it is, here you go. I heard this in one of your interviews. Test versus task.
Mm,
I heard you talking about that concept.
that's right. That's right.
There's the idea of I go to practice and I'm training with my buddies and I'm testing myself,
Mhm.
right? This is kind of the opposite of what you're saying. It's like this is a test today. But the test should be I didn't want to go, I was tired, but I showed up anyways. But the test should not be if I don't beat my friend right now in the gym, then I don't know, they're gonna
I'm not
kill me.
cool.
There's nothing attached to that,
Right.
right?
Right. That's not
So
even a real goal.
exactly. Like one thing that I'll tell you this, training with Gordon and Gary and those guys, that really struck me because they were so much better than everyone I was training with generally. Um, they tapped all the time. I tapped Gary a few times. I've tapped Gordon a few times. I tapped Gordon like 3 times in one round once, and it wasn't because I was better than Gordon. I'm not. I'm not even close to as good as Gordon is. But it was because I had an interesting setup that he was interested in learning how to defend. And so the first time I did the setup correctly was probably closer to legit. And then after that, he was like, let me see if I can put myself back in that spot and figure it
Yeah,
out.
he was walking into the deep water to see what that experience was going to
Exactly. By the third time I did it to him, he was like, yeah,
stop.
you're never like you could tell he was just like, I know exactly how to stop that and you're never gonna do it to me again. And
See,
I
and that's
felt it.
beautiful. That's real learning, and that's real being a real student and a real teacher.
Hmm.
Right? I
Yeah,
mean,
dude,
that's
I had uh Austin Hard, guy who
yeah, yeah,
created the buggy choke.
yeah,
I know you know him.
yeah,
He came into an open mat and I was like, I've been dealing with people trying to buggy choke me for a while, but I said, I'm gonna roll with this guy and I'm gonna put myself in the buggy choke on purpose
right,
and
right.
see if I can
See,
figure what it's out on somebody who's really good at it, who literally invented it.
yeah, yeah,
And 4.5 minutes later, he tapped me with the first one. And then the second time I put myself in, it took like 2.5 minutes before he tapped me with it. And I was just experimenting and feeling the position.
yeah.
Now, could I have sat back and just played leg locks or something and avoided buggy chokes altogether? Probably. But I wanted to,
How do you learn? How do you grow? How do you experience? And jujitsu demands this kind of engagement.
yeah,
Like
Joseph
if you're really
Campbell.
trying to know it,
The uh, the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure that you seek.
is
Right?
that a
It's Joseph Campbell.
Joseph Campbell, bro, all day.
Power of myth. Yeah. And I use that idea all the time. I'm just like, yo, man, if you're good at this, I want you to put me in it and I want to see how that feels and I want to learn from it. But I'm not trying to take every single thing as if it's a competition. And I
Yeah,
think that's something that jujitsu is getting better at for sure.
it is getting better, but it's still in the mix, man. It's still in the mix.
For sure. But I
Uh,
do think that training methodology has been influenced heavily
mm,
by Danaher, by Firas, by those ideas kind of petering out. And I'm sure they exist in other places too. I'm not saying they're the only ones, but like I think that meta of kill or be killed in the gym all the time is going away. It'll still always be there for 23-year-olds who are taking testosterone.
yeah,
But
and it's just a part of the initial. I think when you come in, you're not only looking at killers you want to be, so you're kind of what it pursuing that inner animal. Like
exactly.
how do I have more? And then um, once you get a certain level of arsenal, you allow your stuff to calm down a bit, so you can be more present.
Yeah, it's like an ice bath. Like people will talk endlessly about ice baths and about how they're all of these benefits, but when I think about it, I don't think about that. I think about the fact that I really don't want to get in that fucking ice bath
Yeah,
and then I do it anyways.
yeah,
And that's a test and it's like, "Oh, that's good." But that's a test that doesn't hurt you.
yeah, 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 totally,
I don't
totally.
go, I'm afraid to jump guard on my buddy right now, so I'm gonna go jump guard on him. Like that's
That's not it. So, and before we close it out, I want to say that one of the other things I really like about Cave Academy is that you bring a lot of really cool people through. Can you talk about some of the people you've had coming through in the last, like, say, year, and then talk about who maybe you might have coming in the future before we shut it down?
Yeah, man. I've been very, very lucky. I started this campaign in like 2020, which was not the best time to start it. Um, I started this campaign in like early 2020 where I was like, you know what, dude, I'm gonna try to be the school in the Bay Area that has the best guys come in for seminars. And
Mm,
so I'm not even going to charge them. I'm just going to say, hey, come do the seminar. What's your fee? We'll get that money to you. Just come here. And I want people to be able to learn from all of these instructors that they idolize, that they see on YouTube or Instagram or whatever. So we had Dave Camarillo,
mm,
obviously an amazing legend of the sport, and John Wick, like he's
mm.
amazing, right? And then and a fantastic teacher.
Yeah, unbelievable.
And then right after that, we had Craig Jones,
Right?
and then there was the big pandemic, and then when we came back, God, I've had so many guys, but let me see. This last weekend we had Bill Cooper up here, Billy
Yeah, I
Grill.
saw.
Billy Grill's a legend.
Incredible.
And prior to that, we had William Tackett, who
Yeah,
was
unbelievable. What?
unbelievable. Great teacher, great technique, unique view on jujitsu, and just an all-around good human being that you're like, wow,
Wow.
man, that was fun. And Justin Flores, J Flow, has been up here
Yeah,
twice now.
yeah,
Yeah, always. And again, coming from that judo background, when he teaches, one of the main emphases that he has is like making sure that people are falling correctly, making sure that people are
yeah,
not getting injured by this,
yeah.
right? We don't want
Yeah,
to give our bodies to the sport. You can do that
yeah,
if
you can sacrifice your body to the jujitsu gods. There are many who have.
let me just give some advice to anybody who's watching this who's like a blue belt or a purple belt and like you want to be the next Gordon Ryan or the next world champion of some kind, like that kind of thing. Do me a favor. All of the I'm not going to tap to this or I'm going to let my arm break so I can win this tournament or whatever like that. Maybe do that at ADCC. Maybe do it in the finals of CJI. But
Right. Not
don't do that at the US Open. Don't do it at Naga. Don't do it. Don't do it at your local jiu-jitsu tournaments because you will never get there. If you break your knee, if you snap your neck, if you hurt, if you have these chronic, horrible injuries that you're just ruining your body, overtraining, training when you're super injured, not doing strength and conditioning and mobility work. I work with Charles Allen Price, who does
right.
strength and conditioning for like Fionn Davies and Owen O'Flanagan
Yeah,
and all those guys. And I'm just doing it so that I can continue rolling and continue my job and be in good shape and be healthy. But like, I work his program and it's in the last 2 years. I used to have back pain after class. Like every class, I'd have a little bit of lower back pain. Didn't have any herniated discs or anything. Just it hurts, man. My neck hurts, my back hurts. And working his program, I'm like, I feel so much healthier now.
dude. I'm working with a guy named Akil Bilal. He's amazing. He's across from Gracie Black Belt, and right now he's in Dubai, but he's between Dubai and Cape Verde, and I'm every time I find myself injured, it's because I drifted from that consistency in his work.
Yeah,
And so, like right now, I'm in the midst of going back to his work and being like, please stay consistent, D's. You got to do, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm too old to not do it. I have to do it now, whether I feel like it or not, because it will cost me more time from what I say I want to do forever. Right. So,
yeah. And I do think that one element that if I can leave this podcast with one thing that's been like stuck in my mind for a while now,
yeah.
it's that jujitsu as self-defense. And we
Yeah.
talk about it, oh, it's only if you're in a street fight. Now we talk about self-defense and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But when you first learn, everything is on the nose. Like, how do I destroy another human being? How do I hold him down? How do I sweep him? How do
Right.
I control this thing and break his arm? And how do I do that?
Yeah.
And as a 37, 38-year-old man, I've been doing this for 20 years. I look at it and I'm like, there's this whole other aspect that I'm actually quite good at. I'm knock on wood, right? But I haven't had any surgeries or anything like that. Like
Yeah.
I've been lucky, but I've also focused on this for a long time, which is just while you're rolling, there's two elements. There's the element of beating the other person and not getting beat by the other person, which is like the game aspect. And then there's the physical thing, which is I'm going to destroy your body or take you to the limits of your body. But I also have to be cognizant of the fact that every day when I'm rolling in every class that I'm rolling in, every time I demonstrate a technique, every time that I'm sparring with somebody, I have to be cognizant of am I protecting myself and my joints? And to
Right.
me, is a sweep worth my rotator cuff? Like, no, it's
Yeah,
not.
exactly, bro. Totally.
Like learning how to, the gentle art, like part of the gentle art is learning how to go really hard with somebody, but also have in this autopilot in the back of your head, keep my body in the shapes that actually make sense. My
Yep.
shoulders don't go that way, my hands don't go that way, my wrist doesn't go that way. If he sweeps me and I'm leaning here to counterbalance it, but he's gonna sweep me and I know it,
Yep.
maybe lean this way a little bit and let the sweep happen so that when I put my hand down, I don't put it down hard as hell and then
Yeah.
hyperextend my elbow.
Oh, totally.
So you can still go hard. I can roll that way with top level athletes still for the time being, but hopefully not getting injured.
And I appreciate you. This was a great conversation. I knew it was going to be great. I didn't know it was going to be this great. Thank you for improving me. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, knowledge, and understanding. Um, Tell people where to get at you, and any final thoughts.
Okay. I guess you can find me on Instagram, Cave Mike BJJ, or Cave Academy on Instagram. We have a school out here in Pacifica, California. I'd love it for anybody to come by, whether you're traveling, whether you're anything like we got open mats that everyone can come to for free. And we just got a nice community here, and everybody's welcome to come hang out and spend time with us.
Thank you so much, Professor. Appreciate you, and I'm gonna try to slide up there sooner rather than later. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, man.
Thanks for
Thank
having me.
one love. Hold on. Boom. And